So this is a study on the use of immersive VR or immersive virtual reality in education. So the rationale is that immersive VR is a relatively new technology for public use. There's not a lot of academic studies that address the use of immersive VR in schools. So this study is going to contribute to this field of literature that I believe is going to grow exponentially in the coming years. The problem that this research is going to address is how the use of immersive VR affects student learning and student engagement in school. So this study will address the following two research questions. One, how does the use of immersive VR headsets in class affect student engagement levels of high school students? And two, how does the use of immersive VR headsets in class affect student retention of content material or student learning for high school students? The hypothesis for research question 1 is that student engagement levels in this class will increase after they use the immersive VR headsets regularly to augment their classroom instruction. The null hypothesis of that is obviously that engagement levels remain the same. The hypothesis for the second question is that students will have a better retention of content in a high school social studies class than they had otherwise. The null hypothesis is that there'll be no difference between the students who use the headsets and the group that does not use the headsets. So the literature review is broken down first with an introduction, which explains what virtual reality, immersive virtual reality is, and contrast that with the non-immersive virtual reality, which is an older technology and uses an avatar on a two-dimensional screen. Student learning in VR is then addressed. There's not a lot of literature on this, but there are articles that are starting to address this particular topic. And immersive VR in an educational setting was the third area. I compared and contrast this with non-immersive VR technology in educational setting just to give a basis of what immersive VR is as opposed to non-immersive VR, the avatar-based VR. And then I had articles on motivation and engagement with non-immersive VR. There's a lot of different research done with non-immersive VR, so it's a good tool to contrast with immersive. And then the use of immersive and non-immersive VR as a learning tool in environments other than school. Some environments, in particular the military, and also surprisingly medical environment, and some medical schools are using immersive VR as a means for training and learning. So those were included in the study as well. So the site for this study will be at a high school in Massachusetts. And I wanted to get a school that was determined to be average. The state of Massachusetts tests all its kids in 10th grade with a high stakes test to determine whether they can graduate high school or not, the MCAS. They then align the high schools or quantify the high schools to determine where they stand on levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Levels 2 and 3 high schools are determined to be basically average high schools in the state. Level 1 high schools are exceptional, and level 4 are poor high schools. So I wanted to get a population of kids that were basically from a typical high school. There'll be 9th grade students in this study, and 80 to 120 students, depending upon the variation in class size. I haven't got the exact numbers yet from the teachers of what they're going to get for next year. The instrument for this will be the school engagement scale, which has been used in other studies before. It's basically uses the Likert scale and addresses student engagement issues. That instrument is used for the first question, whether they're engaged or not. In addition, a variation of that school engagement scale will be done by the teachers as well. That kind of mirrors what the kids are doing. Regarding student learning or student content knowledge, we'll do data collection through a series of tests, weekly tests, that are common to all students involved in this project, whether they're wearing the headsets, the group wearing the headsets, or the group not wearing the headsets. And we will be able to measure between the two groups over time if there's an increase in content knowledge, or if it's the same, or if it plateaus, or whatever happens. So we'll see whether they can retain that better or not. The student survey scale includes questions that address behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement in class. It uses the Likert scale to rate from 1 to 5, 1 never, 5 all the time, or 1 not at all true, and 5 being very true. In addition, the scale also includes questions about students' perceptions of teacher support and peer support in class, and questions that relate to students' perceptions of their own competence in class, as well as the value they place on learning. Teachers will be using a variation of the school engagement scale and designed particularly for this study. And the teacher survey will mirror the student questions. Teachers will complete a survey on each student participating in the study, and this will allow for a comparison between the teacher's perceptions of their engagement and the student perception of engagement, which we all know can vary wildly. The data collection for the second research question will conduct through a series of written tests that quantify the student's academic performance and content retention in the social studies class for both the students that are wearing the headsets and the students not wearing the headsets.